The city streets were cold that November night. Rain fell in sheets, turning the alleyways into rivers of shadow and forgotten light. Lena crouched beneath a torn awning, clutching a half-eaten sandwich she'd found behind a bakery. Her clothes were worn thin, patched in places where fabric had given up long ago. She was 17, though the streets had aged her beyond her years. She broke the sandwich in half. The smaller piece she offered to a wet, shivering dog that had followed her for blocks. The animal hesitated, then took the food gently from her palm. Lena smiled. It wasn't much, but sharing what little she had always made the hunger easier to bear. Suddenly, a black van sped past, tires screeching against the wet pavement. Through the rain, Lena caught a glimpse of something wrong, hands pressed against the window from inside, a face twisted in fear. The van turned sharply into a narrow alley and disappeared. Her heart quickened. Something terrible was happening. Every instinct told her to look away, to stay safe. But Lena had never been good at ignoring trouble. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and followed. The streets of the city were cruel, especially to those without homes. Lena knew this truth better than most. She had survived 3 winters on these corners, learning to read danger in footsteps and kindness in strangers' eyes. But survival wasn't her only concern. She had a heart that refused to harden, no matter how much the world tried to break it. Earlier that day, she'd been chased from a warm subway entrance by guards who called her a nuisance. She'd been mocked by teenagers who threw pennies at her feet and laughed when she didn't pick them up. But Lena never responded with anger. She simply moved on, carrying her dignity like a quiet flame. Her only real enemy was Mara, another street girl with sharp eyes and sharper words. Mara had claimed the best begging corner in the district and hated anyone who threatened her territory. She'd warned Lena more than once to stay away. "Your luck won't last forever," Mara had whispered earlier that evening, her voice slick with malice. Lena had ignored her. She always did. But as she followed the black van into the darkening alley, Mara's words echoed in her mind like a curse she couldn't shake. The alley was narrow and lined with rusted fire escapes and broken streetlights. Lena moved carefully, keeping to the shadows. The van had stopped near an old warehouse at the end of the block. Its engine idled, exhaust curling into the rain like smoke from a dying fire. She crept closer, her breath shallow. Through the rain, she saw 3 men dragging someone from the van. The man struggled, but his hands were bound, his mouth taped shut. His eyes were wide with terror. One of the kidnappers shoved him forward. "Move," the man growled. "Boss wants you inside before anyone sees." Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. She should run, she should call for help. But there was no time and no one to call. The police never came to this part of the city quickly, if at all. The man stumbled, and for a moment, his eyes met hers through the darkness. It was a silent plea, desperate and raw. "Help me," his gasp seemed to say, though no sound escaped the tape. Lena felt her body move before her mind could stop it. She couldn't walk away, not from this. The warehouse door groaned as the kidnappers dragged their captive inside. Lena waited until they disappeared, then slipped through a side entrance she discovered months ago during a rainstorm. The building had been abandoned for years, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti and decay. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of rust. Dim light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, casting strange patterns on the concrete floor. Lena moved like a ghost, her footsteps silent on the cold ground. She heard voices ahead, rough, impatient. The kidnappers were arguing about something. She edged closer, hiding behind a stack of old crates. Through the gaps, she saw the man tied to a metal chair. His face was bruised, his shirt torn. One of the kidnappers stood over him, speaking into a phone. "Yeah, we got him," the man said. "Tell the boss we'll wait for instructions." Lena scanned the room, searching for anything she could use. A loose pipe, a fire extinguisher, something. Her eyes landed on a rusted chain hanging from a pulley system overhead. Then she heard it, a soft creak behind her. She froze. A hand clamped down on her arm. "What do we have here?" a voice hissed. Lena's mind raced. The kidnapper's grip was strong, but she'd fought off worse on the streets. She twisted sharply, driving her elbow into his ribs. He grunted, surprised, and loosened his hold just enough for her to wrench free. "Hey," he shouted. The others turned, eyes wide. Lena bolted toward the captive man, grabbing the rusted pipe she'd spotted earlier. She swung it hard at the chain, holding a stack of metal drums above the kidnappers. The chain snapped. The drums crashed down, scattering the men like startled rats. In the chaos, Lena reached the man. She ripped the tape from his mouth and worked frantically at the ropes binding his wrists. "Go," she hissed. "Run." His eyes met hers, filled with shock and gratitude. "Who are you?" "No time," she whispered, cutting the last rope with a shard of glass. He staggered to his feet just as the kidnappers recovered. One lunged at Lena, but she darted away, leading them toward the side exit. The man ran in the opposite direction, disappearing into the rain-soaked night. But the kidnappers weren't finished. Two of them turned on Lena, their faces twisted with rage. She'd saved him, but now she was their target. Lena ran through the alleyways, her breath burning in her chest. The kidnappers' footsteps echoed behind her, but she knew these streets better than anyone. She ducked into a narrow passage, squeezed between two dumpsters, and held her breath. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the footsteps faded. She was safe for now. When she emerged, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The man she'd saved was gone, vanished into the city. Lena's hands trembled as she realized what she'd done. She'd just interfered with dangerous people, people who wouldn't forget. She was about to leave when something glinted in a puddle near her feet. A pendant, silver, and engraved with an intricate logo she didn't recognize. It must have fallen from the man's neck during the struggle. Lena picked it up, holding it to the faint streetlight. It looked expensive, out of place in her rough hands. She tucked it into her pocket. That night she huddled in her usual spot beneath a bridge. Sleep didn't come easily. She kept replaying the man's terrified eyes, his whispered words of gratitude. Who was he, and why had they taken him? The next morning, a news broadcast crackled from a nearby shop's radio. Billionaire CEO still missing after suspected kidnapping. Mara appeared the next evening like a shadow with teeth. She leaned against a brick wall, arms crossed, her eyes cold and calculating. "Heard you played hero last night," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Lena ignored her, folding the tattered blanket she'd been using for warmth. "You think saving some stranger makes you special," Mara continued. "You're still homeless, still worthless, just like the rest of us." Lena finally looked up. "I don't think I'm special, I just did what was right." Mara laughed, sharp and bitter. "Right, there's no right out here, Lena. There's only survival, and you just made yourself a target." Before Lena could respond, Mara snatched the blanket from her hands. Then she grabbed the small bag containing Lena's few possessions, a water bottle, some crackers, a worn book. "Consider this payment," Mara said, walking away, "for the lesson I just taught you." Lena stood frozen, anger and helplessness warring inside her. She wanted to fight back, to demand her things returned, but Mara had a gang, and Lena had only herself. She clenched her fists, feeling the pendant still hidden in her jacket pocket. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't let Mara break her. 2 days later, Lena heard screaming. Smoke poured from a rundown apartment building 3 blocks away. People gathered on the street, shouting, pointing. A woman sobbed, crying that her son was still inside. Without thinking, Lena pushed through the crowd. The heat hit her like a wall, but she covered her face with her sleeve and plunged into the burning stairwell. The smoke was thick, choking. She stumbled up the stairs, following the sound of a child's cries. She found him in a corner, a boy no older than 6, coughing and trembling. Lena scooped him up and carried him back through the flames, her lungs screaming for air. Outside, she collapsed on the pavement, the boy safe in her arms. The crowd erupted in cheers. The mother rushed forward, weeping with relief. But as medics arrived, the boy's father stepped forward, his face hard with suspicion. "Why were you near the building?" he demanded. "Were you squatting there? Did you start this?" Lena's heart sank. Even her bravery was met with doubt. "I just wanted to help," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sirens. The man didn't respond, only took his son and walked away, leaving Lena alone on the cold pavement. Strange men began following Lena. She noticed them first on the 3rd day after the rescue. A man in a dark coat lingering too long near the corner where she begged. Another in a black sedan, watching her from across the street. At first she told herself she was imagining things, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Her instincts, honed by years on the streets, screamed danger. One evening, as she returned to her usual sleeping spot beneath the bridge, she saw him again, the man in the dark coat. He leaned against a lamppost, smoking a cigarette, his eyes locked on her. Lena's blood turned cold. The kidnappers hadn't forgotten, they were looking for her. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she moved through the city, staying in well-lit areas, avoiding her usual routes. She couldn't go to the police, they'd never believe her, and she couldn't tell anyone else, who would listen to a homeless girl. As dawn broke, Lena found herself near the financial district, exhausted and terrified. Tall glass buildings loomed above her like monuments to a world she'd never belonged to. Then she saw him, a man in an expensive suit, standing on the corner, watching her with a strange, knowing smile. It was the man she'd saved. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, his expression calm. You've been through a lot, he said gently. Let me help you. Lena stepped back, suspicious. Who are you? A friend, he replied. Someone who owes you his life. I don't need charity, Lena said, though her voice wavered. The man smiled, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. This isn't charity, it's gratitude. He handed her a card with a phone number. If you're ever in danger, call this number. Someone will come. Lena stared at the card, her mind spinning. Something about this man felt important, powerful, but she didn't trust easily. Why are you helping me? Because, he said, his smile deepening, you helped me when no one else would. Before she could ask more, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Lena looked down at the card. No name, just a number. She slipped it into her pocket next to the pendant and wondered if she'd just made a terrible mistake or found her only hope. The man's knowing smile lingered in her memory like a secret she wasn't meant to understand. 3 days later, police arrived at Lena's sleeping spot beneath the bridge. 2 officers, faces hard and uninterested, demanded she come with them. You're wanted for questioning, one said, gripping her arm. For what? Lena asked, panic rising in her chest. Involvement in a kidnapping, the officer replied coldly. At the station, Lena sat in a grey interrogation room, her hands shaking. A detective leaned across the table, eyes sharp. We received a report that you were seen near the warehouse the night of the kidnapping. Care to explain? I didn't kidnap anyone, Lena said, her voice small. I saved him. The detective scoffed. A homeless girl saves a billionaire CEO. Sounds convenient. Lena's heart dropped. Billionaire. Adrian Blake, the detective said, one of the wealthiest men in the country, and you expect us to believe you just happened to rescue him. I did, Lena insisted. I saw them take him, I followed them, I freed him. The detective leaned back, skeptical. Or you were working with them and got cold feet. Hours later, Lena was moved to a holding cell. The walls were cold, the air stale. She sat on the hard bench, head in her hands, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Outside, through the bars, she heard whispers. Billionaire CEO, still in hiding, investigation ongoing. The night in the holding cell stretched endlessly. Lena couldn't sleep. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. She thought about the man she'd saved, Adrian Blake, a billionaire. The realization felt surreal. Why had someone like him been walking alone, vulnerable enough to be kidnapped? And why hadn't he come forward to clear her name? Doubt crept into her mind. Maybe he didn't remember her. Maybe in the chaos her face had blurred into the violence and fear. Or maybe he didn't care. Rich people rarely did. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. The pendant was gone now, confiscated when they'd brought her in. It was the only proof she had that the rescue had been real. Through the small window, she could see the city lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Adrian Blake was safe, living his life. And here she was, accused of the very crime she'd tried to stop. Please, she whispered to the empty cell, please let someone believe me. The whispers outside continued. Mysterious billionaire victim, disappeared after rescue, authorities searching for leads. Lena closed her eyes. If no one believed her, she'd have to prove it herself. Somehow. The next morning, Lena was released. No explanation, no apology. The detective simply unlocked the cell and told her she was free to go. Someone vouched for you, he said grudgingly, but don't leave town. Lena stumbled out of the station, blinking in the harsh daylight. Who had vouched for her? She had no family, no friends with influence. As she walked through the city, trying to clear her head, she passed a tall glass building with the name Blake Enterprises etched into the stone. Her breath caught. This was his company. She stopped, staring up at the towering structure. Somewhere inside, Adrian Blake was probably sitting in a luxurious office, surrounded by wealth and power. Did he even remember her? Then she saw it in a window on the 10th floor, displayed on a desk, the silver pendant. Her pendant. Lena's heart raced. He had it, which meant he knew exactly who she was. She stepped back, her mind spinning. He'd been watching her. He'd gotten her released, but why hadn't he revealed himself? As she turned to leave, she felt eyes on her. She looked up and saw a figure in the window, silhouetted against the light, watching her. Back on the streets, Lena tried to rebuild her life, but survival had become harder. Mara spread rumors that Lena was a snitch, working with the police. Other street kids avoided her. Donations dried up. Even the bakery that used to leave day-old bread stopped putting it out. Lena's stomach ached from hunger, her body shivered from the cold, but she refused to give up. One night, as she searched for shelter, Mara appeared with two other girls. "Heard you got arrested," Mara said, her voice mocking. "Guess being a hero didn't work out so well." Lena ignored her, walking away. But Mara followed. "You know what's funny? I'm the one who called the cops on you, told them you were involved with those kidnappers." Lena spun around, anger flaring. "You what?" Mara smiled, cruel and satisfied. "You think you're better than me. You're not, you're just naive." Lena's fists clenched. She wanted to fight back, to scream, to make Mara pay, but she knew violence would only make things worse. Instead, she turned and walked away, Mara's laughter echoing behind her. That night, Lena made a decision. She wouldn't let Mara or anyone else break her. She'd survive, she'd find the truth, and she'd prove her innocence. Mara's cruelty escalated. She set traps, spreading lies, stealing Lena's few possessions, even convincing a local gang to chase her from her usual spots. But Lena was clever. She knew the city's hidden corners, the places even Mara's network couldn't reach. One evening, Mara tried to lure Lena into an abandoned lot, claiming there was food there. Lena recognized the lie immediately. She'd seen this tactic before: lead someone isolated, then rob or hurt them. Instead, Lena circled around, watching from a distance. She saw Mara and her gang waiting in the shadows, ready to ambush. Lena smiled bitterly. She'd outsmarted them. She returned to the streets, her reputation slowly recovering. People began to notice her resilience, her refusal to retaliate with violence. A few vendors started offering her scraps again. A shopkeeper let her warm up inside his store on particularly cold nights. Unbeknownst to her, Adrian Blake watched from afar. He'd been following her journey, impressed by her strength and integrity. He saw her kindness, her courage, her refusal to become like those who hurt her. He made a decision. It was time to step into the light. Lena spent days piecing together clues. She remembered the pendant, the logo engraved on it. She'd seen that logo before on buildings, on delivery trucks. It was everywhere. Blake Enterprises. She researched in the public library using the free computers. Adrian Blake, 34 years old, self-made billionaire, CEO of a tech empire, recently kidnapped according to reports, but the details were vague. Why had he been alone that night? Why had he looked so ordinary, so vulnerable? She read articles about his philanthropy, his mysterious nature. He rarely appeared in public, preferring to work behind the scenes. Some called him a recluse. Others said he was humble, seeking to understand the world beyond wealth. Lena's mind raced. He'd been living incognito, walking the streets like a normal person. That's why the kidnappers had been able to take him. And she'd saved him. She stared at the screen, her reflection overlaid on his photograph. They were from different worlds, yet their lives had intersected in that dark warehouse. She made a vow she would find him again, she would confront him, and she would get the answers she deserved. But she had no idea that danger was closing in once more. Mara made her move. She'd learned about the pendant, about Lena's connection to Adrian Blake, and she saw an opportunity. She contacted the kidnappers' accomplices, men still hiding in the shadows, waiting for a chance to finish what they'd started. She told them where Lena slept, where she went, how to find her. In exchange, Mara demanded money, a lot of it. One rainy evening, Lena was cornered. 3 men surrounded her in an alley, their faces hidden by hoods. "You interfered with our business," one growled. "Big mistake." Lena's heart pounded. She looked for an escape, but they'd blocked both exits. "Where's Blake?" another demanded. "You know where he is." "I don't," Lena said, backing against the wall. They didn't believe her. One lunged forward, grabbing her arm. Lena fought back, kicking and scratching, but they were stronger. They dragged her toward a waiting van. She screamed, but the rain swallowed her voice. Just as they were about to shove her inside, a figure appeared. Tall, commanding. "Let her go," he said, his voice cold and authoritative. The men hesitated, then they saw his face. Adrian Blake, the man they'd kidnapped, the man who'd vanished. They ran, scattering into the night like shadows fleeing light. Adrian caught Lena as she stumbled, her legs weak from fear. "You're safe now," he said gently. Lena looked up at him, her mind reeling. You're him." "I am," Adrian confirmed, "and I owe you everything." "Why didn't you come forward?" Lena asked, her voice shaking. "I was arrested because of you." "I know," Adrian said, guilt crossing his face. "I had to stay hidden. The kidnappers have connections everywhere. If they knew I was alive and free, they'd come after me again, and after you. They just did, Lena pointed out. Adrian nodded grimly, which is why I'm here now. I've been watching you, protecting you from the shadows, but it's not enough anymore. They won't stop until they get to me. Lena's mind spun, so what do we do? We end this, Adrian said, together, but you need to trust me. Lena studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. She saw only sincerity and determination. I trust you, she said finally. Adrian smiled. Good, because starting tomorrow, everything changes. He handed her a phone. Keep this with you, I'll call when it's time. And Lena, thank you for saving me, for being brave. Lena nodded, clutching the phone. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Adrian offered Lena shelter in a safe house, a small apartment he owned under a different name. It was warm, clean, and filled with more comfort than Lena had experienced in years. You can stay here as long as you need, Adrian said, but there's something I need to ask you. Lena sat on the couch, still adjusting to the softness beneath her. What? I want to help you, Adrian said carefully, not just with safety, but with your life. I can give you money, education, a fresh start. Lena's chest tightened. Why? Because you deserve it, Adrian said simply, and because I can. Lena looked down at her hands, worn and scarred from years on the streets. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part hesitated. What if I lose myself, she whispered. What if I become someone I'm not? Adrian knelt beside her. You won't. Your kindness, your courage, that's who you are. Money doesn't change that. It just gives you the tools to do more good. Lena met his eyes. I need time to think. Adrian nodded. Take all the time you need. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Saw you with Blake. Big mistake. You're both targets now. M. Mara, she was escalating her betrayal once more. Lena showed the message to Adrian. His jaw tightened. She's working with them. I know, Lena said quietly. She's been against me from the start. Adrian paced the room, thinking, we need to bring her into the open, expose her and the kidnappers together. How? Lena asked. Adrian stopped, a plan forming. I'm hosting a public event tomorrow night, a charity gala. High profile, lots of media. I'll announce my return and reveal what happened. If Mara and the kidnappers are there watching, they'll make a move. That's dangerous, Lena said. It is, Adrian agreed, but it's the only way to end this. Lena's heart raced. What do you need me to do? Adrian smiled. Be yourself, be brave, and trust that I'll protect you. That night, Lena barely slept. She stared out the window at the city lights, her mind replaying everything, the warehouse, the pendant, Mara's betrayal. Tomorrow, it would all come to a head. As dawn broke, Adrian knocked on her door. It's time, he said. Lena took a deep breath, steadying herself. She'd survived the streets, the kidnappers, the cold and hunger. She could survive this. Together, they would bring justice, and Mara's schemes would finally collapse under their own weight. The gala was held in a grand hotel ballroom, glittering with chandeliers and filled with the city's elite. Lena stood near the back, wearing a simple dress Adrian had provided. She felt out of place among the silk and diamonds, but Adrian had insisted she be there. The room buzzed with anticipation. Rumors had spread that Adrian Blake would make an appearance, his first since the kidnapping. Then the lights dimmed, a spotlight illuminated the stage. Adrian walked out, dressed impeccably, his presence commanding. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Adrian raised a hand, silencing them. Thank you for coming, he began, his voice steady. 2 weeks ago I was kidnapped, held captive, I was certain I would die. The room held its breath. But I didn't, Adrian continued, because a young woman, a stranger, risked her life to save mine. He gestured toward Lena. The spotlight shifted, illuminating her. Lena's heart pounded as hundreds of eyes turned to her. Her name is Lena, Adrian said. She is homeless, she has nothing, yet she gave everything to save a man she didn't know. Her courage exposed the criminals who sought to harm me, and they are here tonight. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Security moved swiftly, surrounding specific individuals. One was Mara, her face pale with shock and fear. The police moved in, arresting the kidnappers' accomplices who'd infiltrated the event, posing as staff and guests. Mara tried to run, but officers blocked her path. "No," she screamed, "I didn't do anything." Adrian approached her, his expression hard. "You betrayed Lena, you conspired with criminals, and you thought you could profit from it." Mara's face crumbled. "I was just trying to survive." "So was she," Adrian said, nodding toward Lena, "but she chose kindness, you chose grade." Mara was led away in handcuffs, her schemes shattered. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Adrian returned to the stage. "Justice has been served, but this isn't just about punishing the guilty, it's about recognizing the good." He turned to Lena, extending his hand. "Lena, you saved my life. You reminded me that humanity isn't defined by wealth or status, but by actions, by courage, by kindness." Lena stepped forward, her hands trembling. The crowd erupted in applause. Adrian smiled. "I'm establishing a foundation in your name. It will provide housing, education, and support for homeless youth. Because you deserve more than gratitude, you deserve a legacy." Tears streamed down Lena's face. She'd never imagined this, never dreamed that her small act of courage could lead to something so profound. After the gala, Adrian took Lena aside. In his hand was the silver pendant, polished and gleaming. "This belongs to you now," he said, placing it in her palm. "What is it?" Lena asked. "It's a symbol," Adrian explained, "of trust, of courage. My grandfather gave it to me before he died. He told me to give it to someone who embodies those values. That someone is you." Lena closed her fingers around the pendant, feeling its weight. It was more than metal, it was a promise. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Adrian smiled. "That's up to you. You can accept my help, start a new life, or you can walk away and I'll respect that. But know this, you've already changed the world. You changed mine." Lena looked at him, her heart full. "I want to help others, kids like me who have nothing. I want to give them hope." Adrian's smile widened. "Then let's build that future together." Over the following weeks, Lena moved into a small apartment, furnished and safe. She enrolled in classes, learning skills she'd never had the chance to before. And she worked with Adrian's foundation, reaching out to street kids, offering them the help she'd once desperately needed. Slowly, her life transformed, but she never forgot where she came from. Months later, Lena stood in front of a new community center. Built with Adrian's funding and her vision, it was a place for homeless youth, a shelter, a school, a safe haven. The sun rose behind her, casting golden light over the building. Children gathered inside, laughing, learning, healing. Adrian stood beside her, watching with quiet pride. "You did this," he said. "We did this," Lena corrected. He smiled. "You know, when I was kidnapped, I thought I'd lost everything, but you showed me I'd lost something far more important: connection, compassion, humanity. You gave that back to me." Lena looked at him. "And you gave me a future." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of hope. Lena thought about Mara, now serving time for her crimes. She felt no satisfaction in Mara's downfall, only sadness. Mara had chosen bitterness. Lena had chosen kindness, and that choice had made all the difference. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked. "Saving me, knowing the danger it brought?" Lena shook her head. "No, because even if this hadn't happened, even if you weren't a billionaire, I'd still have done the right thing. That's who I am." Adrian nodded, his respect evident. "The world needs more people like you." Years passed, the community center thrived, expanding to other cities. Lena became a voice for the voiceless, an advocate for those society overlooked. She never forgot the streets. She returned often, not as a visitor, but as a reminder that she was still one of them. She shared meals with the homeless, listened to their stories, offered hope. One evening, she stood before a group of children at the center. They looked up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "I want to tell you something important," Lena began, her voice gentle but strong. "Kindness may seem invisible at first. People might not notice it, they might not reward it, but its echo always returns, stronger than you could imagine." She held up the silver pendant, now worn smooth from years of holding it. "This was given to me by someone whose life I changed. But the truth is, he changed mine too. Not because of money or fame, but because he saw me. He recognized my worth when no one else did." The children listened, captivated. "You all have worth," Lena continued. "No matter where you come from, no matter what you've faced. Your kindness, your courage, that's your power. Don't let anyone take it from you." As the children dispersed, Adrian approached. He was older now, grayer, but his eyes still held that knowing warmth. You've built something beautiful, he said. Lena smiled. We built it together. They looked out over the center, at the lives being transformed, at the hope being restored. The city lights twinkled beyond, a reminder of the world they'd changed, one act of kindness at a time.